on the door. We don't want to just knock on that door. We want to blow it off the hinges.
Welcome in John Parker today from the HoriZone Roundtable on today's episode of Matchup Zone, where we will be covering IUPUI, the Jaguars up in Indiana, Indianapolis to be precise. John, say hello to the people.
How's it going, Norse Nation?
Yeah. So you guys probably know John, seen his name around. He writes a lot of articles for the HoriZone Roundtable. He's similar to you could say like a utility guy in baseball, but since we're basketball fans, maybe put him in the category of like, yeah, like I would honestly put you. I don't know if I'd give you this much credit, but I would put you in like the Dantez Walton category. Like we can kind of play you anywhere. You could even be a point forward if you had to.
Okay,
But you're the JUCO version of Dantez Walton. Like you haven't made it to the 33 point top 100 on the NBA draft prospect board. You haven't made it there yet. So John, yeah, huge IUPUI fan. He's been covering them for years. No, seriously, John, why don't you tell the Norse Nation a little bit about some of the stuff you're doing over at HoriZone Roundtable, why you're writing about IUPUI and like where you went to school, stuff like that. Give us some background.
Yeah, so I went to UW-Milwaukee. It's been kind of a dark time there lately, so it hasn't been too much fun. I was never really all that good at writing Milwaukee because, being a fan, I don't know how you do it, man. I don't know how part of it is probably that you haven't had to have too many dark times yet, but
when we first went D1, it was tough.
That's fair. I was just never good at writing about the losses, the bad part of it. So we have someone else handle all of that. And if we get Pat Baldwin Jr., I'll be all over it. But I've always been super interested in college basketball and, very invested in the HoriZone League, given that it is, my school's league and a league that, back when I was in college, Valparaiso was in the league. Bryce Drew and the shot back in the 98 tournament got me into college basketball. So it was even more reason. And then when I was in school was when Butler was doing their thing. My last college game was, we were playing against the eventual national runner-up Butler on our court because we beat them twice during the regular season. So the HoriZone League has always been, for going back longer than I want to tell you how, has been a big deal for me. And so when I was approached by Bob about writing HoriZone League, and it was just kind of like, well, hey, not Milwaukee, but I'll do it. And lately with the HoriZone Roundtable, picking up a lot of writers, we've still got some gaps. So I'm trying to fill in there when I can. Yeah. And that's sort of where I'm at. And then just writing, whatever I feel like, the power rankings and just, hey, this player's doing a really good job. We haven't really talked about them. So here it is. Now it's on paper, and Matt and Bob have to talk about it on the podcast this weekend.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, yeah, hey, you've been doing a really good job. I know you're actually in the Norse Nation fan page, so and you haven't gotten any trouble yet or anything. So congrats.
I I had to join on because my name was on top of the HoriZone League, the HoriZone Roundtable's preview article. So had to come on and defend it like, hey, I didn't have them bottom half.
Right. Just make sure that everyone knew that the reason they were so low is because Matt Dudek had
picked
them
11th.
Which is so ironic because per the latest net ratings today, Oakland, it took everything within me, by the way. I almost quote tweeted that from Norse Report and said, hey, at HoriZone Matt, do you think that the NCAA forgot to swap Oakland and NKU? I almost said that, but I decided not to because it's too early in the season. They've already beat Wright State, and we just got crushed by Cleveland.
Milwaukee's second, and I don't know why.
In HoriZone or in the net ratings?
In HoriZone. Yeah, we're second in the HoriZone ahead of Cleveland State.
I think y'all are like third in the net ratings. Milwaukee is, I think, like because that's how we do our power rankings. Chris literally just puts them in order of KenPom because that's his Bible basically, and so I think the net is pretty reflective of KenPom right now.
Nope, we got them by 2 spots. We are ahead of 8-0 in the HoriZone League, Cleveland State.
Wow, that kind of sucks. Well, I tell you what, we're going to talk about IUPUI here in a second, but on that Cleveland State,
right.
like I know they're better than that though. Like I think that 40-point loss or 55-point loss at Ohio kills them.
Yeah, and especially when Ohio's best player turned around and got hurt, so now they're losing games that they probably wouldn't have with him. Yeah,
for me, Cleveland State, like that one huge loss they had. If you look at that's a complete anomaly. Like they played Toledo tight. They almost beat Ohio State, or at least were very close.
Yeah.
And they've absolutely just ran roughshod through the HoriZone League. So whatever. But anyway, let's stop talking about good teams and start talking about a team that I don't know, man. I'll say this, dating back to 2018, when the HoriZone League decided to, I don't remember what exactly the format was that year, but the HoriZone League had decided to switch up like the way the tournament was. I think it was the top 4 teams. Well, that was the first year they introduced the Final Four. That's what it was in Indianapolis, right?
Yeah.
And rather than Detroit having the whole tournament or whatever. And so I remember saying how unfair it was that they did that year because that was Cam Justice's first year eligible. And I was like, dude, if I'm IUPUI, like I am going out there and doing everything I can to get a top 4 seed so I can play the entire tournament at home. Yeah. And they didn't. They were like 7th or 8th that year, a first round bounce to was it Wright State? Had to be Wright State.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. Because I don't remember. But either way, and so that was a huge disappointment. And so then coming into last year, obviously they had the Byron or their head coach having the DUI and Byron Rim having to take over and all that. But you still had a talented team. No Cam Justice, but you had Jalen Minette, Marcus Burke, and Elijah Goss, and they were god awful. But like those 3 players were solid still. And so the same kind of thing this year. They even did a little bit better job, you felt like, in recruiting, bringing in some guys that could compete. And they're still it's early, right? But they're not really the team that we thought we were getting when we first, when the season first started. And so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you like make all that make sense to the best you can.
Okay. So the big thing with IUPUI was just massive amounts of turnover that mostly didn't affect their main guys. They had Grant Weatherford transfer out to Georgia Southern, the point guard from last year, but they kept their 3, top scorers, and all 3 of the guys who got some sort of, or have had some sort of, all league type accolade. Minette was the 6th man of the year 2 years ago. Burke was obviously all league last year, and then Goss was all defensive team. So they kind of had like 10 or I think 8 shots to bring in new players and see what they could do and see if they could actually build some depth around. they went the junior college route frequently. They only have one new freshman. It's Bakari Lestrap from Texas. They landed Azariah Say and Bobby Harvey on the perimeter as well. And Nathan McClure. And then 5 front court players. One of the things with a lot of the guys that they brought in is they already had NCAA experience. I don't know, my thing just when I was doing like the season previews and stuff like that for, filling in the gaps, all of the guys that they had brought in with previous experience, they were arguably making a lateral move to the HoriZone League, if not actually moving up in terms of quality of opponent, or I guess quality of the roster that they were on. And none of them really did anything on the previous school for all the big men in particular. And that has definitely played out. It's been a huge issue for them. Who's going to be the second big man who can contribute next to Elijah Goss? Right now, nobody is stepping up. They have 5 junior college transfers that are combining to average about 3 points and 3 rebounds per game between 5 of them. Their backcourt additions, Harvey and Azariah Say and Bakari Lestrap, have all been pretty nice. But they're not getting anything from the front court guys, and that was arguably what they needed more of last year anyway.
I wouldn't say arguably.
Minette
averaged, or was it Burke averaged 21 a game and Minette averaged 16. Like, those guys did their job.
Yeah, they could have used a backup for them. Having Azariah Say
10.
Yeah.
Right? So,
yeah. And they just, the other thing with them that makes it really difficult is after their game to open the season, I believe on the first day of college basketball, they had a bunch of issues with, COVID protocols and not being able to take the court until, most of the rest of the league is already 4 games into HoriZone League play. So from my perspective, they're kind of where everyone else in the league was about a month ago, which definitely isn't going to help when the expectations and kind of, what they needed to build on was already so much. I think I mentioned Bakari Lestrap being their lone freshman. I do think he's a guy who's going to wind up in their lineup, but just kind of needs to figure out D1 for a minute first, like a lot of guys like Terrence Thompson did, like Grant Coleman at Milwaukee, like Parrish at Oakland.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, you look, you don't want to, I get so touchy around this topic, but because this isn't a throwaway season, no season's a throwaway season. And I'll say that because if we win the tournament at the end of it, I don't want people saying it's a throwaway season. That's why we won the tournament. But at the end of the day, like, if there was ever a season to not have a good season, it's this one. But that's an easy coping mechanism if you're a typically good team in the middle of a rebuild with a bunch of young guys who's looking to see what you have. But with a team like IUPUI, who absolutely has something to prove, with a head coach, and we'll talk a little bit about him later, that may or may not have long-term job security there. It just sucks. Like, it sucks for them because, I mean, who knows? Would the results be much different? I mean, I don't know. They are 0-4 against 2 top 3 teams in the conference right now. So maybe it's just no, seriously though. Like,
in the standings, yeah. Okay.
In the standings, yeah. Well, power rankings we drew out of a hat this week, so I don't want to hear that. And we based ours off Kim Pom, and that dude ain't never watched a HoriZone League game in his life since Butler left. So he just has an algorithm that he's had put together since 2009 and just pulls in all the data for him. So no, I'm just kidding. But my point I'm trying to make here is, like, I think that more so than any other year, and this is gonna be a repetitive narrative this year, is we don't really know anything. And Matt will tell you that that's always the case, but Matt Dudek will tell you that's always the case. We're just dumb fans. We really don't know anything. And he's right to a degree, but like this year we really don't. I mean, they've had 5 games. Like they played their very first game December 12th, and then they were off for 3 straight weeks, and they're just now getting up to the point that NKU was when we entered conference play, just about. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, enough of the rant. Tell me a little bit about, like, you've watched a few of their games this year, obviously not a ton, but you've watched. We talked about offline about half of them. In those games that you watched, what did you see? Because I think our fans are going to be more interested in star players for them. So, for instance, like the big narrative for us is going to be slowing down or stopping Manette and Burke, which surprisingly, and you asked me about this yesterday on, I think, a Twitter DM, is like somehow we've been really good at stopping opposing really teams. Yeah, well, guards primarily, I would say. I don't recall what Naz Bohannon did against us the 2 games we played, and we might have stopped them. I don't know, but my point I'm going to make here is we got 2 of them this time, and it's going to be a greater challenge because, you know, whereas Quisenberry is one really good guard, and then he's got a good forward to go with him, and Godfrey is one really good guard, and we did well against them. When we play a complete team like Cleveland State, we didn't do as well. And while IUPUI is not a complete team, they got 2 very talented guards. So they can definitely offset us up top a little bit, especially in our zone. So the question I'm trying to ask you here, and I'll get, you know, in the longest way possible, I guess, is when you've watched their games, what have you seen out of Burke and Manette? Is it rust? Because they're averaging respectively 6 and 5 points less per game this year than they did last year.
So one of the reasons I wanted to go back and watch, you know, the Cleveland State games where Manette wasn't playing well was like, why? And honestly, I can't put most of it on like a star defender. It seemed like the game just sort of turned into almost like a G League game or an AAU game where it was just run up and down the court and shoot. And when Cleveland State was doing it in one of the games, the one where they, you know, won comfortably, obviously, they were making it look pretty. And when IUPUI for both games, they would just run up the court. I've referenced it. It's like me playing an old college hoops video game. Run up the court, open 3, shoot it. You know, no flow, no anything. Now we're running back down the other way. They do the same thing. Just a track meet, but not the fun kind, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Both those games against Cleveland State, they shot 16 threes and then 18 threes. That's not even their season high, but that's, you know, it's an average of 17 threes a game. It's about what they're averaging for the season. But I know exactly what you're talking about. I haven't watched the film, but that's sort of what Cleveland State wants to do to you. They didn't do it against us because I don't know if they were worried about us hitting them, or it's because they just had done it to Purdue, which they shouldn't be, by the way. But or if they had just done it to Purdue Fort Wayne, so they wanted to switch it up against us. But when I was talking to Alec, their entire philosophy against Purdue Fort Wayne was play into what is Purdue Fort Wayne's like strength, but turn it into a weakness, and essentially run the 2-2-1 press, get them sped up, fall back into a 2-3 to basically bait them into shooting threes.
Yep.
I couldn't believe they didn't do that against Cleveland State. Didn't do that against us. It almost makes me wonder if they did that against IUPUI, which then begs the question: is that what we can expect from IUPUI? Is because we're not going to speed them up with a press most likely, but we will zone them. And while our zone is more of it's a matchup zone that is more of it resembles a man. It's got a lot of man principles, but there's basically switching, and you are operating in a zone. It just makes me wonder, you know, what will they do? Will they look to attack more? Will they look to shoot more? And that's kind of where I was coming from with that question about specifically Manette and Burke, because they have the capability to score from everywhere. So,
yeah, and that was this weekend when they played Milwaukee, when they both had kind of a rough game. It was a bloodbath. They were much more competitive when they were both firing. And like I mentioned earlier, you know, every single player on the roster not named Burke, Manette, and Goss combined for 14 points. You know, a solid game for one guy, but when it's, you know, 6 or 7 players combining for it. You're not getting much there. And that was kind of how Milwaukee withstood that strong game from both Burke and Manette that sank a lot of teams last year. Well, I guess sank Oakland a couple times, and then like South Florida out of nowhere in the non-conference. But yeah, I mean, to an extent, it's a similar thing where it's stop those guys and you should be okay. I don't know. I think Manette has kind of been rushing his shots, going back to what you mentioned earlier about why are these things happening? Why is it playing out that way? He was actually out for their lone win. So Burke and a bunch of newcomers had to do it themselves.
And just so the fans know, like Jimmy and John looked it up right before we went live. Their one win was Tennessee State. And Tennessee State would be the 13th Horizon League team in net rating if they were in the Horizon League. So just to be clear on that, like IUPUI's one win is against what would be the worst team in the Horizon League. So
be fair, they gave Chattanooga a good game.
I know, yeah. So that's the weird thing that we couldn't quite figure out. And part of why I was going to, but I ended up flopping on it, write an article about why the net ratings don't really mean shit. To teams like us is because, I mean, really, can you make sense of that? Like, they played Chattanooga really close. We got kind of beat pretty good by them, but we're forever ahead. So
yeah, I think there's kind of a fatal flaw in the net ratings when you are a lower ranked school. It's kind of all about, like, when you're playing one of the top teams in the nation, do they pull their starters with 10 minutes or did they pull them with 2 minutes? That's going to affect your net rating, even though you didn't really have any say in that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let me ask you this then. And, I don't know what level of detail you can provide here, so feel free to just give me some high level and then pass, or we can go into it if you want. Either way, but based on what you know about our team, what would you say? I'm handing you the whistle today. You're Byron Rim for the day. What's your game plan to going in and getting a win with the players and team you have against Northern Kentucky? Like, what would you emphasize to your team?
I mean,
we're about to find out why John's not a coach.
What?
We're about to find
honestly,
out.
with the makeup of it, I think with the makeup of the roster, being so guard heavy, I think it's basically just do what you've been doing, but try and move the ball around a little bit more than they have. Because, like I said, that run down the court and just take the first 3, even if there's 3 defenders back and you're alone, that hasn't had good results for them when they actually try and pass the ball around to do things. I mean, if they can get Burke and Manette hot at the same time, which is, I mean, a fluke, kind of. It just happens sometimes. And then, like, one other guy.
Yeah.
Sorry, not a coach.
No, I get it. It's I have a hard time with IUPUI as well. Like, that's kind of my assessment on them, is like, it just feels like it feels like a lottery ticket, basically, like when you're playing against them. But if the odds were reversed, right, to where you win every time except for like the one random time. Yeah. And so it's like, if you're the team that gets on the wrong end of Marcus Burke and Jalen Manette just going bananas.
And now I will say they do have 2 more guys who can put in, Azariah Say has already been their leading scorer in a game, I think, which almost never happened last year where it was anyone but Burke or Manette.
Right. And it's funny now that we're talking about these 2 guys, I'm racking my brain, but I thought I remember one of them giving us problems last year in one of our games, but I can't quite remember. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But let me ask you this: we're kind of about done with this, I think. There's not a lot to say about IUPUI, other than what we've kind of already covered, which is they have 2-3 really good players that could have a role on any team in the conference, and then the rest of the guys they're kind of just hoping to get something out of. Why don't you tell me a little bit about Byron Rim? I know you wrote some stuff about him last year, right? You kind of covered their coaching search specifically.
Yeah.
And I think you were looking at it over the summer too, right?
Yeah. They were initially actually planning on moving on from him, it looked like.
Yeah.
Before everything went crazy with COVID-19. They had done some interviews. They did an interview with Bradley assistant Drew Adams. Anyway, they were in the process of, figuring out who their next full-time coach was going to be. Then the world went crazy and they just opted to kind of do another year of interim coach. It's weird to say it, given that we are the league where a team fired a, near perennial 20-win coach in Link Darner at Green Bay. But last year there was, a dramatic decrease in coaches who, firings in general, but especially, the Link Darner thing was just nuts. But even with that, everyone kind of figured it's an interim coach. Of course, you're going to, find your new full-time guy. And they just sort of decided not to. It definitely puts a lot of pressure on him to get things turned around this year. And I do think that's probably a part of why they went so JUCO heavy with their recruiting, was to get, players who were ready to play right away to try and put something together. And obviously so far, I don't even know if it's, the team or just the nature of going 3 weeks without playing while everyone is out there every week. But right now they're obviously not there yet. And you mentioned strength of schedule. I do think that probably has an impact there too. And it's already starting to seem like on the coaching carousel front, Northern Illinois fired their coach this year mid-season. It seems like we might be back a little bit more towards a normal offseason in terms of coaching changes. So he's definitely under a lot of pressure to turn things around here and to deliver for the second half, I guess, of the college or the conference season.
Imagine getting fired after this season though. Like that's crazy. Yeah. All right. So I had, looks like I got it back. I was gonna say I had so many browsers up and my browser crashed, but I got it back up. So to clarify on that, Jalen Minette only had 7 and 9 against us last year, but his buddy Marcus Burke he went nuts. So Burke saw us at home at IUPUI for 25, and then he said, "No, that's not enough." And then he came to BB&T and put up 30 on us. And look, I'm gonna screen cap all this and put it in as B-roll for this interview, but when the fans look at these game logs, you'll see exactly what we're talking about, that these guys are pop off alert, be on the lookout.
What if Minette had gone for 20 that game,
Yeah, well, either game it was, let me see.
It didn't even matter.
It doesn't show the score in the game log that I'm looking at, so never mind. Probably wouldn't have. I remember us pretty much whooping up on IUPUI last year. But I'm just looking at this right now, and it's again, the fans will be able to visualize it. But these guys, there wasn't a conference game. Let me make sure I got this right. There wasn't a conference game where Marcus Burke scored under 15 points last year. That's unreal.
Yeah.
So,
and then I actually double checked as well. I think there were 3 games all season last year where someone other than Burke or Manette led the team in scoring. So Bobby, it was Bobby Harvey who did it so far this year, not Azariah Say. And I think one of the times it was Goss anyway. So, it seems like they have a little bit more help, but it's still primarily about, what can those guys do?
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. Well, hey, John, thank you so much for jumping on this with us. My goal is to try to, I'll have some clips of this, put them out on social media, stuff like that. But my other big goal is this week, I want to do it a little bit different. We did a video breakdown of the past weekend with a couple of writers from the Norse Report, Larry Weichel and Michael Ruscher. So we will have that actually with this video together on the same YouTube channel. That's just my YouTube channel, Kyle Craven. Fans, that's where you can find that. We'll also be sending it out in a newsletter as well on Friday morning. And then just make sure you're paying attention to the Twitter feed, guys, at Norse Report, at Kyle Craven _NR. That's where we're going to put all of our updates. Actually, take it back. I've been telling people not to follow at Kyle Craven NR. Just go ahead and follow at Norse Report. Do yourself a favor. Way less controversial. And you're not going to get mad at me. So follow at Norse Report on Twitter to see all the latest updates. I'll post the newsletter that gets sent out Friday. I'll go ahead and just post it out on Friday as well. You will have to subscribe to that, but it's free. And it's got tons of good information. John, why don't you leave our fans with some of the stuff you're working on, some of the things that you want them to be on the lookout for, and
all right.
tell them where they can find you as well.
Oof. Okay. So I should probably do the same thing as far as Twitter. I should probably do the same thing as far as Twitter. You can find me getting posted, feels like every day, over at HoriZone RT on Twitter. Right now, I'm working on finishing up the women's power rankings that we're putting out. I know you guys put out your men's today. We've got ours coming out Wednesday. I am working on a fun little game that you and I are going to be running on Friday nights going forward. Well, It'll be me this week, but
yeah, I'm going to try to have my version this week, but with it being a short week for me, there's no promises. I'm trying to get it out there, but fans might have to wait one more week for me. But anyway, go ahead, John. Sorry.
And then I have to apologize to Mr. Warwick for saying he wasn't going to be freshman all league on account of.
I thought you were about to tease something else. Go ahead, finish your thought.
That was a whiff. So I'll have that mea culpa coming up on, I think, Friday. And then next week, I'm going to be getting into kind of at the midpoint of at least the teams that have been able to take the court every week, their Horizon League schedule. I'm going to be working on some mid-season awards.
Yeah, cool. That's great. So is the Marcus Warwick piece, our fans will be interested in that. Is that a specific to Marcus Warwick, or is that a part of those mid-season awards? Can you tease us on that?
That is specific to Marcus Warwick.
Ooh, okay. Well, fans, just so you guys know, John doesn't want to tell you where you can find him. So if Marcus Warwick doesn't end up as the mid-season freshman of the year, you can just find the HoriZone Roundtable podcast on Apple Podcasts, and you can give it a 1-star rating and tell him why. Tell him you hate John, and it's blasphemous to not have Marcus Warwick as the freshman of the year. So just kidding. Don't do that.
I mean, he will be, but.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. We just pressured John into it. So yeah, John, we'll have to have you on more often, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. We've got a lot of, teams lacking writers in the league. So I'm sure we'll talk again.
Yeah. And if anyone out there does happen to listen to this randomly, real quick, John, we are missing some writers. You bring up a good point. What teams are we missing from the HoriZone Roundtable?
Okay, so
it's not that many this year.
IUPUI, Green Bay. Ideally, we're going to get Matt off of writing Oakland and let him just kind of mostly do the podcast and throw out whenever he wants.
Yeah, so we got to have that happen. Do we have USC?
We do. We're working with a guy who runs, kind of similar to your newsletter. That's one of the teams that we've got kind of like, hey, shoot your stuff over to us. And
okay, Flamesmania, basically. Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that who it is? Okay.
That's what we've got for basically UIC, Milwaukee, and Robert Morris.
I know we're going to try to work on something like that with Green Bay. So we might be covered there. But hey, Norse fans, if any of you guys are looking to, to get into sports writing, any experience, stuff like that, look, it's not something that, can be paid or anything like that at this point in time. But it is a lot of fun. We really love what we do. Obviously, I'm more than happy to bring you on board at Norse Report. But if you're wanting to kind of figure out what's going on in the HoriZone League or kind of own your own content, definitely reach out to guys like John, Bob McDonald at HoriZone RT, and let them know that you're interested in covering some of the teams that we need to be covered. So, John, again, this has been like a 10-minute sign off. Thank you so much for being on. Appreciate it. Be good. Have a great week. Have fun getting drunk this weekend, watching some pretty poor HoriZone basketball this year.
Hey, no, this week it's Wright State, Cleveland State. So this one's going to be fun. This is the heavyweights.
Yeah.
After this, it all goes downhill, but
yeah, that's true. There's going to be some eyes on that one. Oh, and it's a double header, obviously. So that's like it. This is the weekend, and I'm going to be gone. Oh my gosh.
Oh,
yeah, brutal.
I mean,
all right.
Can you imagine if Cleveland State sweeps?
Imagine? I mean, look, it's like, okay, this is the last thing I'll say, and then we can get out of here. But we're based right by Cincinnati, so a lot of us are Bengals fans, whatever. And it's interesting because you hate the Browns, you hate the Steelers, and you hate the Ravens, but you hate the Steelers. Like the Steelers are your first, second, third, fourth, and fifth least favorite team. Like the Browns beating the Steelers it sucks. It's annoying. The Browns are trash, but that's fine. Like it doesn't bother anybody. Like everyone in Cincy was pretty much rooting for the Browns last night. And that's kind of like how it is with Cleveland State and Wright State. Like there's no love lost between us and Cleveland State. They knocked us out of the tournament in 2018 in the first round. And then they gave us a pretty bad loss on Drew McDonald's senior night too. So we have every reason in the world to hate them, but I can't hate them. And especially if it means them knocking off Wright State. And when we're having a down year, give it to me, dude. I'm all for it.
If they're going into the midpoint of the year, 4 games up on everyone but Milwaukee, who hasn't played enough, and Robert Morris, who hasn't played enough, that's
Vince Carter. It's over.
Yeah.
It's over. I mean, basically, obviously it's a one bid league, so they could be 5 games up, 6 games up, 8 games up, whoever. And then shit the bed. And they could even win every game in the tournament, right? You could go into the tournament undefeated, 1 seed, 6 games up on everybody, win all the way through, lose in the championship, and your ass is going to the NIT. So it is what it is. That's where we are. But anyway, again, for the 4th time, thanks, John. We'll talk soon. See you, man.
Yep. Have a good one.
Bye.